Schaefer here, sometimes known as Carrie Ann King, and this is Tell Me Your Secrets. I'm so glad you're here hanging out with me again today. My guest is a really interesting person with a fabulous book. I know, always, right? I am the luckiest talk show, podcast, video cast host in the world because I get to talk to all of these really super cool, fascinating people. So today we're going to meet Seamus Heffernan. And I didn't ask him actually, but I'm going to bet you that there's a little Irish background in that name. I could be wrong. He's from Newfoundland, and maybe that's a Newfoundlandy kind of a name. So we'll talk about that too. Seamus is the author of the Thaddeus Grayle mysteries about a private investigator. I finished one last night. It was started it, couldn't put it down, kind of a read, very enjoyable. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Seamus adapting to being an author and going back to a day job and being a pretty much brand new dad. So we got lots of topics of conversation. Feel free to drop questions. I may or may not be able to get to them. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and bring Seamus on right now to talk to you. Hey, Seamus.
Hey, Carrie. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you? We already kind of had this conversation.
I'm okay. I just got home from work. So, although I can't say I wouldn't have dressed up for you anyways, but yes, by happy coincidence, this is what I just threw on this morning.
I'm liking the tie. I do have to tell you, if I wore something white ever, like all day especially, but for 5 minutes, there would be coffee or chocolate or something on it.
There actually is coffee on the shirt, but fortunately, the angle of the camera and the whiteness, I'm not even kidding. And I've washed this shirt, so
it's perfect. The lovely little label of your name hides it for us. So
yeah. Well, the great thing about working in the school system is children like making fun of how you dress anyway. So
sure.
Yeah.
Give them some feedback. So tell our listeners which particular animals in the school system you are working with.
Animals is a bit harsh. It's
hey, we're all animals. I love them. I love them. I do. I'm sorry.
It's not Lord of the Flies.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. Well, I used to be a high school teacher, and I taught in a lot of different schools. And because of the recently, I've gone back to teaching here locally. I'm speaking to you from Abbotsford, British Columbia, which is on the far west coast of Canada. And so I've recently gone back to teaching here. So I've been substituting, which is interesting because it's kind of like the bat signal. It goes off and you don't know where you're going to be sent or where they're going to need you. Just every morning the phone goes. So for instance, today I was at a middle school teaching 7th grade English. Although teaching may be a bit grand, I was in a room with children and things were said out loud. Whatever was absorbed is up to them, I guess. And yesterday I was in a kindergarten class.
Oh my gosh.
Which everybody I tell that is, oh my gosh, that must be so cute. And it is not. It's very difficult for someone who's used to working with older children to suddenly be surrounded with people who get to sleep on rugs during the day. So.
Well, right, because it's not fair. You don't get to sleep on a rug.
That was remarked upon, yes, but I don't think that their sense of irony isn't as keen as you may expect for 5-year-olds.
No. Oh, and they have so much energy. And then I ran across a Facebook post where you were dealing with 9th graders, I believe, which, yeah.
It's okay. It's a mixed bag, but I very much like it. I've always enjoyed working with young people. I like teaching. I used to coach for a long time. So that part's that's not really an issue for me whatsoever.
Right. And I agree. I actually loved teaching. I was telling Seamus ahead of time that I have worked with some 9th graders and it was a bit of a challenge. I was substitute teaching for an entire year and they were not so interested in the English I wanted to teach them. So.
No, and it's very hard to create passion for 30 kids in a room,
right?
Especially since so many of them are just resenting being there.
Yeah.
But overall, I still find it really rewarding, and I find that even in the role of substitute, there's usually 1 or 2 moments during a day where you can really hang your hat on when you come home that you're in the right place, the right time to kind of point a kid in the right way, or have a teachable moment, or help them, improve the writing. So yeah, that part, I still enjoy. And if it goes horribly, horribly wrong, you just go home and you start it all over the next day.
Right.
It's literally the Groundhog Day of day jobs.
Well, yeah, except for you get a little different angle thrown at you. There is a difference between the kindergartners and the ninth graders, just kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
a frustrating, long, drawn out difference. But yes,
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I handled 2 small children of my own, and that was enough for me. I'm not. Yeah. So speaking of that, Seamus, we as women writers, we very, very, very often, almost always on an interview, get asked a question like, how do you manage to balance family and kids and job and all of that? Guys don't get asked that all that much often, but I really, you and I talked about this a little bit ahead of time, and I'm, really interested in how that's going for you. How old is your baby?
My son is almost 7 months old, and it's been an absolutely life-changing experience. And I know that's cliched, and literally everything about the parenting experience is cliched.
It is. Cliches exist for a reason, I feel.
They're a real time saver. Everything that people told me was going to happen has happened. They said that you're going to see your son and your whole world is going to blow out like a dead star. Everything changes. Yep. You are going to be consumed with a kind of love and commitment that you've never experienced before. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, Hallmark movie, no problem. And yet I remember coming home, and the day after he was born, I was holding him and I was panicking. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to make a complete hash of this. I have no business bringing a child into the world. I can't even take care of myself. What kind of world have I brought him into? What have I done? And then 10 seconds later, absolutely, maybe even less than 10 seconds later, I was thinking, if anybody tried to hurt my son, I would kill them, their family, burn their home to the ground, and salt the earth so nothing there would ever prosper again. And it was literally like that. I thought, oh yeah, so right, all that psychobiological stuff they said is absolutely true, and it kicks in just like that. So for me, it's my first child. Perhaps you may have noticed a little bit of pewter in this beard. I've left it a little late in the game to start. I am enjoying it thoroughly, and for how it's affecting my work, I have no complaints. I have a wonderful partner. We work very hard to divide our parenting duties and make sure that we still have a little time for our own work and our own pursuits. Last couple of weeks I've been working on something. I've come home from work, spend time with my son. We put him down. I try to get a couple hours work done, then spend some grown-up time. Because I spend all day with children, it's nice to have an actual adult to have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's like anything. If you want to get work done, if you want something, you want to accomplish something, then you just have to figure out how you're going to do it. You're just going to figure out how to make the time work. We make time for everything else. Now you have a kid, so that's going to take up some of your time. So how are you going to adjust your time to meet your own expectations, meet your own professional or personal goals? Well, that was a bit more Tony Robbins than I intended. Sorry.
No, hey, I'm totally Tony Robbins, actually. I mean, in the extent that I really do believe anything that you really want, you will find time for. Yeah. That's what I used to remember when my kids were little and I was working, and people would say, how do you find time to read? And I just look at them like, how do you find time to breathe? I mean,
absolutely. I can't remember who said it, but how we spend our days is, it's how we spend our lives.
How we spend our lives. Yeah, exactly.
How to fill those days. I actually think my partner just walked in. I don't know if my son, Chelsea, hey, come over and say hi when you get a chance.
Oh,
I figured you wouldn't mind the slice of life moment here.
Yeah, absolutely. You even have some pictures to show us of your son. That's
let's see. This
proud daddy.
Yeah, that's James in his Batman shirt. And that's me dressed significantly more casually. Being a Generation X male, I realized that my casual clothes are literally the same since university. It's plaid shirts and band t-shirts.
Oh, there they are. Here's the real deal. Hello.
Hey,
hi, Mom.
That's my partner. And she's running away. James, hey, bud.
Hi. Uh-oh, you're hiding in behind. There we go.
There you go.
Hi, little one.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, son, how was your day? Little smile. There you go.
There you go.
Little smile.
Good.
I've always wanted to do this. James, the whole world. My son James. There you go.
Okay, now we will do our absolute best to get the whole world to see this.
Yeah, well, that was a little shout out to any of the Bill Murray Scrooge fans who might be watching this, by the way.
I love Bill Murray. Oh, that's so awesome. My world changed too, absolutely, totally with my kids. And the thing is, it doesn't ever stop.
No.
My Viking and I, we worry. Well, I try not to worry. I choose not to worry. I'm going to think positive things. He does enough worrying for all of us. So, our kids are our oldest between the two of us is now almost 30, and he still gets worried about on a regular basis.
I moved away from home when I was 22, and my life got blown apart when I was 35, and I had after 13 years I had to move back home into my parents' place.
Oh my gosh!
Sleep on a couch in my old bedroom for a while my life did a full Control Alt Delete. So that's just a nice way of reminding myself that the burden of responsibility of parenting never goes away, and I may have to do the same thing someday. And
you totally will, because that thing where you would burn the earth to save your child never goes away either.
Well, the good news is, because I'm in my twilight years, it's very unlikely that I'm going to live to see my son turn 35. So hopefully he'll have all the stuff figured out by then himself.
Oh, see, I plan to live to be like at least 100. So I gotta believe all kinds of things. So I wanted to ask you about your book a little bit too, clearly. So
Sure.
One of my questions was, you're Canadian.
Yep.
Your private eye detective is American.
Yep.
And he's living in England.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a white nationalist nightmare, really. It's one of the most diverse worldly books out there. Yeah, I just imagine Steve Bannon reading it going, damn it! Why can't all of this just take place in good old US of A? So there's reasons for that. What happened was I lived in the UK for a long time. I lived in London for a very long time, about 5 years. It had a massive formative impact on my life, and not just the experiences there, but the friends who I made. I just got back last year, and it was wonderful. So many people were still there and still willing to make time to see me, and I just love it. I think it's truly a world city in the way that so few places are, and living there was one of the great privileges of my life. So when I decided to write a book, obviously setting is very important. So you want to pick somewhere that people have an immediate recognition of. So if I say London, England, you're already thinking about red buses and phone boxes and black cabs, and Big Ben and the Eye. So boom, like half your work is done for you.
Right.
Yeah. If you read my books, you're like, oh, right, this is fast. This guy's just lazy. He just wants to get going with the story. It's not, he's not Jonathan Franzen. He's not really interested in the nuts and bolts stuff. So when hello. Kelsey is shyer than James, I'm afraid. So I gave a talk recently, and I was sitting next to two other writers who, including my good friend AJ Devlin, who's a fantastic Ellis Award-winning crime writer here in Canada. He's writing out of Port Moody, and he was talking about the importance of setting, and how you have to get the tone right, and how you've got to build your whole story. Like, it's got to feel like you're right there. And I said, yeah, I don't buy that for a second. Like, I just need a place, and then I can make the story happen. So
I'm good. Well, I'm going to stop you, because I think that you did manage that actually really rather nicely. And I think it was just done by, showing us details through your character's eyes. So you didn't bother setting, some big elaborate set for me, but I certainly was able to, see what was going down. One thing Seamus and I were talking about before this show is that I read the second book only and not the first book. So what I am here to tell you is it's okay to start with the second book, although I'm guessing it's better to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, a couple of things will make more sense in the second book if you read the first one. But I mean, they're a series, but I mean, they can be enjoyed individually. It's like an episode of Law and Order. I mean, there's a little bit of carryover, but I mean, you're really just picking it up. You're just picking it up for a cool, fun story, when you're sitting on the beach or waiting in line at the the Department of Motor Vehicles need to kill some time. I mean, no one's reinventing the wheel here. The crime books, they're fun, they're great to write, and they're accessible, and people enjoy them. Thank God.
Yeah.
But even if they didn't, I would still probably do it. So.
Because you write because you love it, right?
Yeah.
But totally, all of the pieces were there, and there is a lovely plot structure, and all of those things are totally there. I was immersed and really enjoyed it very much, and was quite concerned about Thad's safety for a short period of time.
Yeah.
He is a little reckless. Speaking about the publication, I noticed that your book is published by something called Crooked Cat Press, and I'm going to guess that that's a small press. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. My publishers are Crooked Cat Press, Lawrence and Steph Patterson. They're based in France. And how we got together to make all this happen was, I started writing the first book as a hobby, and I did it over a few years. And then a couple of years ago, I got quite serious about it. I had just finished my master's degree, and I found that I'd had just enough gas in the tank to blow through the last 10,000 words or so of the first manuscript. Like all middle-aged white men have a real sense of unearned confidence. I figured, well, I'll just write a book, and something good will obviously happen. Why wouldn't it?
Why not? Right. Just
my ilk have been hitting three-pointers since the dawn of civilization. What could possibly go wrong? But I knew nothing about publishing. And I'm still convinced I know very little about publishing.
None of us really know anything about publishing.
I knew that I had a book, and I gave it to some friends who I trusted. And by that, I mean friends who would tell me if it was hot garbage or not, because your friends want you to be successful. So you have to be very careful who you share your work with, because a lot of people will just pat you on the back and say it's great because, they want to be nice. That's why they're your friends. They don't want to say, hey, your hopes and dreams are over. This is a dumpster fire. Move on. This is just never going to happen. So if you have somebody who can kind of set you straight like that, you definitely want to put them to use in this regard. Unfortunately, the feedback was, fairly positive. So I decided to get more serious about what to do with the manuscript. And I looked up, I think I Googled, how to get published. Even saying this out loud, it's amazing. So there's basically three routes. You can, if you want to get with one of the big houses, say like, Random House, whatever, you got to have an agent. And getting an agent is a painfully long, drawn out, sometimes insufferable thing. I mean, it's bad enough getting rejected by publishers. Now you're going to get rejected by agents so they can help you get rejected by publishers. The whole thing can go on forever. And I'd already demonstrated by the nature of my prose that patience may not be my strong suit. So option two is you can self-publish. And I was not interested in that, not because I had any hang-ups really about self-publishing, but just because it's just too much damn work, man. Like, I just wrote the book. I don't want to be the one worrying about what the cover looks like or how this is going to end up on Amazon or how do we format it for Kindle. Like, no, I don't want to deal with that. So I realized that there existed a huge number of smaller presses all over the world who were taking chances and working with new writers in various genres. And because mine was a crime book, and crime books are quite popular, there was a lot that I could reach out to directly, and so I did. And much to my surprise, I got an email from these guys. They said, "Hey, we saw your manuscript. We'd love to work with you." I did have to check to make sure that it wasn't one of my friends playing an elaborate prank on me, because I wouldn't have put that past them.
That would just be cruel. That would be a cruel joke.
Yeah, they would have made up. They would have made up like a whole publisher, maybe even Squarespace themselves a fake site. But I was looking at my notes, and no, it was a real publisher. So I got in touch, and that was it. So we wanted to work together, which makes it sound like it's far more give and take. Like, they could have asked for anything. Like, yeah, sure, just do it. Absolutely. I'll come to France and mow your lawn. Just get the fuck out there.
Get the book out there, yeah.
Yeah, I like how I phrased that. We decided we'd work together. Like I had any power in the negotiation whatsoever, right? So
you had the power of refusal.
Mm.
You did.
Sure. Absolutely. But again, I think that good things happen when we say yes rather than no. And I felt very fortunate to even have somebody say that they were interested. So right. I wasn't necessarily going to say, well, I'll just say no. What's the point of that? Yeah, take a chance.
And so here you are. So
you're going to get rich. So go for it anyways.
Yeah. It's possible to get rich writing books, and it's also possible to win the lottery.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Or what? Do you have any hot stock tips, or do you know a horse that I should be looking into?
I do not. I only know, here's what I know. It's if you keep writing and you keep putting books out there, the chances of you making money from your books increases exponentially with every book. It took me, which book was it for me when I finally quit my day job? It was like number 8,
Yeah.
7 maybe.
No, absolutely. And I'm part of this Facebook group, something like 50,000. I can't remember. It's a measurement of words to money, and it's about like a lot of independent writers and small press writers. And there's guys there who are writing like $2 a month. Like, how is this happening?
I know. I don't know. I've done 2 a year, and that for me was a lot. I'm doing it again this year, or at least I plan to. One of them being indie, by the way, which interestingly enough is something I said a couple of years back that I would never do.
Right.
But I've gotten to, as you begin to understand how the pieces go, and you've got a few books out there, then it becomes kind of interesting to go, well, wait, it might be fun to have someone involved, to have more involvement in designing the cover, and getting it set up for Kindle really is not difficult. I have the technology to do that, and it takes me about 1 minute, and all I had to do was invest in some software, right? So it's not as hard as I thought it would be.
No, I know. I feel like I'm being pub shamed right now. I really.
No, don't take it that way. I find it fascinating that there's so many different ways to get books out there. And I think the small press can be an absolutely brilliant way to go. No pub shaming, not allowed.
Yeah, I think the days of, guys like Joseph Heller taking 12 years between their books, I think that's done, man. I think that's over. We're just, the market has changed too fundamentally now. So if you want to be a serious writer and make a dent in the market, then you're absolutely right. Consistency and productivity are the 2 ways. So one of the nice things about my job is, hopefully I'll have some time over the summer to more re-engage. But I'm enjoying some other things in my life right now too.
Right. Well, which I think is really awesome. People who only write and never do anything else, sometimes I think they get kind of stagnant. Like, you're not having any contact with the rest of the world. You don't know what's going on. You're not learning anything new. And then you don't have anything new to put in your books. So the more you're out there experiencing and living and doing stuff, the more you actually have to write about. So that's a good thing, I feel. I almost forgot. Now, this is completely random and off track, but I was going to ask you about your name because, well, honestly, I love the name Seamus.
I've grown to love it. As a kid, I wasn't crazy about it because
I'm sure nobody knows how to spell it when you're a kid.
It's really unique. And my parents decided to make my childhood especially miserable by giving it the traditional Irish spelling, which is Seamus. I should probably point out that I know for a fact my parents are listening to this right now, so I'm just kidding, Mom. It's okay. Put the
Hi,
phone
parents.
down. It's okay. My childhood was perfectly fine. But as I've gotten older, I'm definitely more comfortable with it. Especially, like, the full thing is kind of a unique moniker. So, and it doesn't look terrible on a book cover, so it all worked out. Plus, apparently, there's a minor character in Harry Potter named Seamus. So
I was just going to say, yeah.
So when I was at an elementary school last week, a bunch of the kids thought that I was the coolest sub ever because of that. Obviously not because of my tie. So, but here we are.
Well, you are missing an opportunity with the tie. There are so many different types of ties you could go with.
I am, which may surprise you, but I'm hopelessly old-fashioned about a couple of things, especially because my last job was suit and tie every day. So I'm going to work now. I've said, well, forget it. Like, I'm not leaving these things to go to waste. But most of my ties tend to be fairly conservative stripe or rep ties like this. Blandly inoffensive.
So, Thaddeus, on the other hand,
yeah,
who has some things in common with you, I feel, having got to know you just a little bit, and some things totally not, because Thaddeus, your private investigator, I don't see him wearing a conservative tie. Do I have him wrong?
No, I think that he wears, I think it mentions that he wears a suit quite a bit. I don't think we ever talked specifically about neckwear. And again, a lot of that stuff I kind of like leaving to people's imagination.
Uh-huh.
I knew that I wanted him to be dress like a professional, but I wasn't really going to obsess over, the spacing of the herringbone pattern on his jacket or whatever. People can fill in those blanks for themselves. Although, I mean, I've read GQ for a long time. I had a wealth of material, but I decided not to bore people with it. I could have been the Tom Clancy of men private eye fashion. I decided to
decided not to go there, right?
Yeah, just constant technical detail about the width of lapels and how to match your socks with your belt. But no, people can fill those mental blanks in for themselves.
Right. Which is perfect. Now, you have a degree in criminology, or?
Yeah, I have a master's degree in criminology.
Okay. And did that lead you? I mean, your choice in choosing a private investigator. Actually, I have to tell you, I found this very fascinating. I believe in, well, actually, I just love when there are weird little coincidences. I can't say that word in my life. I was doing research. As a matter of fact, I still have a tab open on private investigators because I put one in my current novel that I'm writing. And I'm finding out about how it works in the United States and what you need to do and all that. And I'm writing this character that is a private investigator. And then I started your book and bam, it's a, mega private investigator story. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Maybe I'll learn something helpful. But I'm curious about, what made you choose a PI as a sleuth? Was there, just you thought it would be fun or anything else going on there?
I basically wanted to write the kind of stories that I loved when I was a kid. I wanted to write those kind of pulpy crime stories, just lightning quick, lots of twists, lots of turns, lots of snappy banter between the characters. I think that I owe my parents a great gratitude. They let me read way too many comic books and watch way too many TV shows like Crime Story and Naked City and stuff like that. And I've always loved the genre. I always have. That's when you get hooked on when you're a kid. I mean, it's not just your kind of review, I guess, of the masculine anti-hero, but that's kind of, that becomes, your kind of prism through which you want to tell your own stories, that genre and that type of character. I mean, there's nothing really interesting or unique about using a private eye as your protagonist, except the fact that literally it's worked so well for so many other viewers. So if you're talking about the basics of a story that are going to hook people, well, you need stakes, and a private eye obviously can have fast stakes. You already alluded to the fact that you were quite nervous about the fate of the protagonist.
Yeah.
And you need, you need, if you're writing a crime story, you need somebody who can obviously interact with crime. Writing from a police perspective, I wasn't really interested in procedurals, kind of limited with that. That's just my take. The private eye can be kind of the lone wolf or the rogue who can come and go as he pleases. Since Hammett and Chandler, since the master himself, they figured it out long before I did. So that's why I wanted to go with a private eye. By coincidence, not only do I have my background in criminology, which didn't have any influence on the book, I also have my provisional private eyes license here in DC. I've only worked very, very briefly, and much like a lot of Thaddeus's work, it's very boring. It's
right.
Driving cars and eating bad food and waiting for some guy to come out who may or may not be faking an injury. It's a living, but I much prefer the one that I have now.
Right. I hear you. That was something, we all have this idea of the private investigator is always having this exciting life. I think some of the shows that I grew up watching too. And then I started researching it. It's like, oh, wow, you spend a lot of time just sitting around trying to track people on the internet and social media and do background checks and all that kind of stuff too. So
you could really catch up on a lot of audiobooks, I think. Or a lot of podcasts like this.
Yeah, hey, you got nothing better to do.
So if you're sitting on a tail job or surveillance job right now, British Columbia private investigator serving the interest of insurance or whatnot, please, check out your podcast provider. Download a bunch, including this one.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And some time with your nondescript vehicles.
I am a little bit jealous of where you are right now. I do have to say that too. And we're talking physical location because I grew up in Williams Lake, as I told you, which is not far from you really. And I miss home sometimes. I'm in the States now, although, I'm in Washington and I'm not far from the Canadian border. So it's kind of a lot like where I grew up. But anyway, I was very excited when I discovered I get to talk to somebody from Canada because, there's just always a little A little bond with the home and native land.
Yeah, I think most Canadians enjoy that whenever we connect with people. We're shockingly well regarded across the world, which is great on a national stage. And certainly, I think that's improved the last couple of years under the current leadership. I'm quite biased in that regard, so we're just going to move past that quickly.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that.
No, I mean, God knows you're never going to have a perfect country, but I've lived in a lot of places, and I'm fiercely proud to be Canadian, and I'm fiercely proud to be in this part of the country and have both my life here and the life of my young son here. I don't know what the future holds, but I'd be very surprised if we spent a lot of time outside the country, both professionally or personally, going forward.
Right. Well, I wish you and your family and your books just absolutely the most brilliant and wonderful future imaginable. I'm going to go back and read the first book in the series because I have to know how we got where we are. For those of you who are listening, Seamus is spelled Seamus. Yep. Heffernan is Hefffernan, and your website is SeamusHeffernan.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, not original, but it certainly is easy to find.
It's probably easy for you to get social media handles.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. And I mean, people have been, so kind and so generous, including yourself, Carrie. Thank you so much for having me on. But the feedback from people online and people who've contacted me through social media, the people who've supported other writers like, AJ and Dietrich Kaltis and Sam Weeb here in BC. If you're listening to this and you have a question about writing or publishing, I don't care if you read my book or not. You can contact me through the website. I'll get back to you. It might take me a week or two, but I'll always write people back when they do. Feel free to reach out, drop me a line. I'm happy in any way to pay it forward and keep this madcap world of indie writing and publishing going.
Awesome. And it's SeamusHeffernan.com, and then also on Facebook, just / Seamus Heffernan again, I believe, right? Or is
That's my personal one. Seamus Heffernan Author is my author page.
Right.
You can also find me on Twitter at SG Heffernan, and Instagram, same thing, at SG Heffernan. So plenty of ways to get in touch if you want, folks.
If you're looking for the books on Amazon, it's the Thaddeus
Grayle. That's probably the easiest way to find it. If you're here in the Fraser Valley, I know some of the locals are stocking it, but the easiest, especially for people who like it for the Kindle, Amazon is the way to go. But yeah, that's definitely the easiest way to find it. So if you're anti-Bezos, just bite the bullet for me on that one, will you, folks?
And don't be anti-Bezos, because he's my friend, because I'm with Lake Union Publishing, and that's been awesome for me. So again, I am your host, Carrie Schaefer, also known as Carrie Ann King. You can find out more about me and follow this podcast at writeattheedge.com. That way you can see all the episodes as they come out and make sure you do not miss a thing. So I invite you to go find a good book to read. You might start with Thaddeus Grayle, and I will see you next time on Tell Me Your Secrets. Bye.
Thank you very much.